Most Tesla investors are not invested in Tesla for the robot division. That blows my mind. It hasn't even like scratched the surface yet of Tesla investors.
People are seeing Elon Musk's timelines and that his inability to hit what he says and saying, okay, he's talking about robots. That's probably another 10 years from now. Let's not focus on that. He still hasn't even gotten us full self-driving that's like completely hands-off. I could text on the phone and work on my computer and look back at the passenger and like not have to keep my hand like on the wheel.
Yeah. I love what you just said, because that is the biggest like piece of information asymmetry ever. In that he cried wolf so many times
like this one time.
Now that he actually is on to the biggest thing that's ever happened, no one believes him. I love, like, I think about it all the time. I'm like, I was saying this a year and a half ago. I was like, no one is going to believe Elon and his humanoids because he's already lost his reputation when it comes to timelines on autonomous driving. So like no one's going to believe him. And by the way, I'm not saying this is going to like happen overnight either, but it's not decades away.
I think people were disappointed when they saw his humanoid experience and the humanoids were serving people alcohol and it was obviously like a comedian behind like speaking with people.
Yeah. It's teleoperated.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, in the robot community, there's like nothing wrong with that. Teleoperation is the gold standard in how we train robots using artificial intelligence. So you teleoperate the robot, but every millisecond of that performance of how the robot interacts with the human, what they do, the sensors in its fingers, the way that it walks, the way that it moves its arms, the reactions, that's all training an artificial intelligence model so that in the future, you could have those exact robots in that exact setting without being teleoperated. The only way that they're going to learn how to do that on their own is either to go through a teleoperated training data set or put it in a simulated data set like they have in NVIDIA. NVIDIA has robotic simulated data sets, but like we have to train the robots. This is not an easy process, guys. Training robots to basically think like humans and act like humans and engage with the real world environment around them is not an easy thing. That's going to take years. But it will happen. It will happen. And eventually we'll have generalized autonomous robots that can do anything. You can drop 1,000 robots in a company and the foreman could be like, I need you to do these tasks. And they'll be like, okay, can you show us how to do them so we know exactly how to do them? Like, yeah, my crew will show you how to do them for an hour and then I want you to do them with the other 20 trucks. And they'll just go to work. Like that's going to be like, you won't have to train them more than that.
How does Google's quantum chip fit into this? Is this a part of the equation where their chip could somehow power these like way faster and make them way smarter, or the two separate?
I think they're separate, but the concept of quantum computing is super interesting when we think about just generally how we're going to advance artificial intelligence over the next decade and a half. And the quicker we advance artificial intelligence and robots go hand in hand. Remember, this is called embodied AI. It's the embodiment of artificial intelligence. There's no doubt that quantum computing, once we start to commercialize it, will further advance artificial intelligence, not just to be generalized, but to be super artificial intelligence, right? So to have artificial intelligence that's actually smarter than humans. And when you combine that with autonomous robotics, you can really have wild things happen right on Earth. To me, what we can achieve with this is just wild. Yeah. So as an investor, remember something, guys. I have never seen a point in my lifetime where we have pulled forward revenue as investors as aggressively as the last 4 years since the pandemic. So what I mean by that is when we have industries emerging, as soon as we start to see that this industry is developing and it's going to happen, we start to look at the revenue it will produce, like with NVIDIA, and we don't have to wait 10 years for that company to grow into the valuation anymore. That valuation gets sucked forward, which is kind of interesting as an investor. So if you can catch something that's really large, it has a large total addressable market. Like physical labor is about 1/3 of global GDP, believe it or not. And some people think that once we have infinite physical labor, that physical labor could be larger than our GDP today in 15 or 20 years. So this is the largest industry on Earth. theoretically, not even theoretically, it is the largest industry on earth. And if we crack the code, which we already have, it's just a matter of engineering, scaling this out now, Wall Street's going to catch on to it very quickly. And I think they're going to pull forward those revenue models of what does it look like when you're printing millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of robots, and they're being leased out at these rates because the value of the bot is that big. You're going to have companies that are massively larger than today's companies. That's why when I'm not like a Kathy Wood. I don't normally throw out big numbers like I threw out in January when I said Tesla could be a $10 trillion, just their Optimus division could be $10 trillion by the end of 2030. I thought about that tweet thread a long time before I hit the button to send it out. I was like, no, I really believe this. I really believe that that is real. And at the time, Tesla was like a $400 billion company or 300, 200. It was like at its low. I really believe that. And I think fast forward a couple of years, the concept of having these $10 trillion companies is not going to be that spectacular anymore or that seem that obscene. But the TAM is huge. The total addressable market is gigantic.
How much does it affect it if the overall market right now is very expensive? When you look at it objectively, I mean, the market, the PE ratio is only been this high in like the 1920s, 2000s .com bubble.
Yeah.
A lot of people do say that we're in a bubble now and the market is too expensive and that it's overvalued. How does that play into all of your thesis? Or is that even something to be concerned about?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. It's really, we're living in a very difficult time to assess what's coming in like 24 months, which is crazy. Like if you went back 15, 20 years ago, we can tell you exactly what's coming in 24 months. You could look at all the technologies and you could be like, there's no way this technology is going to grow more than this much in 2 years. Now, try to assess the next 24 months. Do you have a clue? I can't even imagine. Nobody knows what's going to happen in the next 24 months. So we're living in a period of time where technology and innovation are accelerating at such a rapid pace that it's become almost impossible to predict what our world is going to look like in just 2 years' time. So could we be in a bubble? Yeah, we could be. But we could also not even remotely be in a bubble when it comes to some of these new sectors like AI, robotics, right? If you think about the concentration of productivity, like what happens to a company like Amazon if they have infinite physical labor? Just what happens to a company like that? You know, Amazon works off of very small margins. What happens if they can operate at meaningfully higher margins? Like, could you imagine, like Amazon could be 10 times the size it is today. So we could be in an overall bubble. There might be a lot of companies that get crushed because of this new world that don't survive it. We did an episode on Dumb Money where it was like talking about all the SaaS companies, software companies. We're like, will any of these survive? Could we see a day in like 10 years where all the big SaaS companies basically go away? Like DocuSign and Salesforce, the list goes on and on. Will a couple of these companies innovate with AI so aggressively that they become, valid companies in the future? The rest of them just go away, and all this gets wrapped up to a very small number of companies. Like look at what's happened in the last 5 years. A small number of companies have assessed all the market cap. Mm-hmm. Does that continue? Maybe. If so, maybe both things are right. Maybe we're in a bubble for a lot of companies, but for other companies, we're nowhere near where they're going to end up in like 10 years.